I'd like to call the Tuesday, February 25th, 2020 meeting of the Pittsburgh Commission to order. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would open it for public comment and invite Father Jerome Spexar from Our Lady of Lourdes to join us.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to offer a reading from the Book of Wisdom, sacred scripture. I prayed, and prudence was given me. I pleaded, and the spirit of wisdom came to me. I preferred her to scepter and throne, and deemed riches nothing in comparison with her. Nor did I liken any priceless gem to her, because all gold in view of her is a little sand, and before her silver is to be accounted mire. Beyond health and comeliness, I loved her, and I chose to have her rather than the light, because the splendor of her never yields to sleep. O Heavenly Father, source of all wisdom, we ask that you bless this evening's meeting and these representative leaders of our city. Allow the Holy Spirit to influence our conversation with wisdom and humility, with prudence and justice. Open their hearts to the joy of your presence today. Bless them and their families with peace and patience, compassion and counsel, forbearance and fortitude. This we ask through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments this evening? Please state your name and address, and please limit your remarks to 3 to 5 minutes.
I will do that.
Thank you.
William Strength, 1515 Hampton Road here in Pittsburgh. I'm not here, tonight I'm here to talk about the appropriations ordinance, one part of it, and that's the $120,000 to P&L development. Back in March of 19, the city manager asked you guys for $120,000 to take it from asphalt to concrete. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is paying for it right now. With the city ordinance, it says that the developer is to pay the city, reimburse the city for the city to do the inspection of the project. The one thing I think you need to ask tonight is, why did the city give up that responsibility to have the city, to the developer, hire his own tester? And I'm going to invite the public to go out there and drive the roads after I talk about what's out there right now, before you do it, so they can see themselves. And I got the specs here, and part of the specs, and I'm not going to go through it, it's not going to take 3 minutes, but one of it says it's supposed to be core drilled before you accept it. You shouldn't pay for it until you've accepted it. It's supposed to be core drilled every 500 feet to ensure the thickness. And then at the same time, I would be checking the thickness of the aggregate and the base, at whether it was compacted like it was supposed to. And then also, it's supposed to be with a 10-foot straight edge, any direction, not be more than 1/8 of an inch from being smooth. Go out there and look at it. You don't even need to have a 10-foot straight edge. You can see it. The expansion joints and the contraction joints have regulations. Right now, that's becoming one of the worst roads in Pittsburgh because they didn't finish the joints. They're getting moisture in them every time it rains or snows. Then as soon as it freezes, it's starting to pop already. We're starting to get potholes out there, and we don't even have the public driving out there yet. We've got curbs that are sinking and cracking already. We got one area that there's not 150 feet between 2 inlets, and where does the water set? In between them, where the curb is sinking and is bowed out. The specs call for 95% compaction underneath the road and then 92% compaction 5 feet outside the curb. And the stuff was supposed to be put in lifts. I lived there, I've got photographs for when the water line was put in, and they just dumped it in. There was no lifts. I would say you need to get a hold of the inspector, who the developer did hire, if he did hire one, and look at his inspection reports. Make sure they did what they were supposed to. Don't trust anybody saying they did it. A little over a year ago, when Silverback and the stormwater was being discussed, we were all told all the permits were in line. The permit for Silverback Landing was issued for stormwater January of last year. And then it was revised in April of 19. So in May of 18, they were not in place. You were told they were, and you believed it. But ask to see the NOI for Silverback Landing, and you're going to see it wasn't even applied for until the end of November of 18. So trust but verify. And that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, sir.
But the public should go out and look at it.
Anyone else, public comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Within the consent agenda, we have the approval of the February 11th meetings. We have approval of staff recommendation of Joshua Lukin and Daryl Pullman for the Airport Advisory Committee, effective immediately to conclude at the end of 2020. We have an approval of a farm lease between the City of Pittsburgh and Mr. Kenneth, I'm going to butcher this name.
Buncarelli.
Thank you. For the lease of all the tillable and grassland. I think this is an annual thing. And we have approval of the appropriation ordinance ending February 25th. And we had a revised agenda where we added to the consent agenda the Riggs chiropractic request to consider changing the recipient name on the EDAC funding paperwork to match the name of their company that purchased the land. So are there any items to be pulled off?
Item B.
Item E,
Which is the Riggs thing, right?
it changed, right?
Yeah.
Is the new, E is,
Sorry, I don't have a name.
I don't have any.
E is, no, it's changed. E is the, sir, do you want this copy?
Oh, the appropriations, okay. So we're pulling off the airport, is that the one you wanted to
Yeah.
pull off? And appropriations, okay.
Thank you.
All right, so the consent agenda will include A, C, D. Do I have a motion to approve? The consent-
moved.
Moved by Patrick, seconded by
I'll second it.
Chuck. Roll call vote?
Brooks,
Yes.
Fields.
Yes.
McNay,
Yes.
Munson,
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. All right, going back to B, approval of staff recommendation to appoint Joshua Lukin, airport user, and Daryl Pullman, non-airport user, to serve first terms as members of the Airport Advisory Committee, effective immediately and to conclude on December 31st, 2022.
I just have a question. Was asking me, Daryl Pulliam is already on one advisory committee. Is it acceptable to have, serve on more than one? All right, that was my question.
I think they've had some difficulty getting qualified
sure.
individuals to get on this.
So I have no further questions, and if there's none, I move to approve item B.
I second.
Moved by Chuck, seconded by Cheryl. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion, opposed, same sign. Oh, I gotta remember that delay. Motion carries. All right, item E, approval of appropriation ordinance for the period ending February 25th, 2020, subject to release of HUD expenditures where funds are received. Cheryl?
Okay, the appropriation ordinance for P&L development. I'd like to ask for justification because of taxpayer dollars. And I was wondering if you could help me understand a few things. And I would like to know, explain why this didn't come out of the 2019 budget. Why is it coming out of the 2020 budget?
know you guys, excuse me, good evening. I know you guys approved the payment of $120,000, I think in late 2019, like $60,000 from the RLF fund and $60,000 from the general fund. The developer had just paid his contractor for the road project on the landing. And so he brought that to the city for so we could pay the $120,000 towards that, going from asphalt to concrete. And it wasn't, his contractor wasn't paid until 2020, and we weren't gonna pay it until he paid his contractor.
So it's a reimbursement to the
Right,
developer, it's not
right.
a prepayment.
He had Emery Sapp, I believe, was the contractor on that landing. And that's why it wasn't paid until 2020.
I was just looking at the street and highway fund and the economic development revolving loan sales tax fund, and I know they estimated them in 2019, but it being paid for in 2020, it has zero here, and that's why I was asking. So you're just saying it's because they paid him now?
Yeah, he just got paid like 10 days ago.
Okay. All right. So this was approved on March the 19th, and then this is 2020, and so it took quite a while. So the $60,000 in improvement, the improvement fund, is that street sales tax?
No,
What is it on?
the 60,000 was $60,000 was out of the general fund reserves, and 60,000 was out of the RLF money. There was no street sales tax.
Okay, it said general fund operating reserves?
Yeah,
Okay, and then improvements.
that's just the account number in the RLF fund.
Okay, that's in the RLF fund?
Yeah.
So you took it from the RLF and the general fund?
Right, per commission's decision on that matter.
Okay, and they changed that after March 19th of 2019?
I don't recall.
What do you mean changed it?
Well, I thought at that time that 60 came out of the street sales tax fund and 60 came out of the revolving loan
No,
fund.
nope. Based on community input, we did not take it out of street sales tax, we took it out of reserves, general fund reserves. We never voted on taking it out of street sales tax.
You never voted to have it out of street sales tax?
It was recommended, but it was declined.
All right.
Any other questions, Cheryl?
Nope.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the appropriation ordinance?
Make a motion to approve it.
I'll second. Oh, okay, oh, well, okay, I second. Moved by Larry, seconded by Don to approve the appropriation ordinance. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
I think Patrick did, so motion carries. Thank you.
I just want to clarify, item E on the consent agenda on this is actually approval of HUD expenditures, not the P&L development. That's
Right. Did I say P&L?
Appropriation ordinance?
The appropriation ordinance includes all
Right.
expenditures.
Yeah.
But we can't pay any HUD expenditures unless we've received the funds from the federal government.
So
that's why-
subject to release of HUD expenditures?
right.
Okay, did I read it wrong?
Well, I just want to make sure that there weren't questions on
Okay,
that.
okay,
Okay.
thank you. All right, we're moving into a public hearing. Darren, do we have a presentation first and then move into the public hearing? Is that how it works? Like,
It's all right with you, I'll just kind of set it up.
yeah, that's it.
So, Madam Mayor, members of the commission, this is a property tax exemption request related to a new facility for Apex Stages. We've got CEO Todd Allison here with us, got a couple of pictures for folks watching at home. That's what it looked like before Todd moved all of his equipment in. Beautiful new building. And this is how Todd really likes to see it.
Full.
Is busy and building stages and creating jobs. So you had the information there. This was a $1.7 million project in the airport industrial park, completely new facility. At that time, when the city commission approved the incentive package, The tax exemption is something that typically waits until the building is finished, so we're at that point. So we're requesting that tonight per the state's requirements. We did a cost-benefit analysis. Steve Robb is here tonight. Steve was the author of that and can answer any questions. Basically, just making sure that it's a good investment for the community and that the other taxing entities, that even though they won't see the increased property tax immediately, in the long run, it does benefit them as well because the project is so good and creates new jobs and new investment in our community. But Steve would be happy to answer any questions related to the cost-benefit analysis, and obviously Todd can answer any questions about the facility or the business or the job creation that was possible with this project.
Could Steve give us the for dummies, the cost benefit for dummies overview? That would be great, because this is fairly new.
Sure.
process.
Well, overall, included in your packet is the entire cost-benefit analysis, and you're right, it's a lot of information. But there is a kind of a master list showing over the next 10 years, $3.1 billion increase in new personal income, 10 new jobs, 15 new residents in the community, over $3 million in new local retail sales, and over the next 10 years, a $1.7 million increase in the local property tax base. So then within that cost-benefit analysis, he breaks it down for each taxing entity. So the city of Pittsburgh, Crawford County, the school district, the Wildcat Extension District, he breaks it down as to what the impact would be on each one of those, showing that again, for the next 6 years, which is what a $1.7 million investment would qualify the company for, is a 6-year tax abatement, showing that even though they won't see the increased tax amount for that 6 years, that beyond that, that they will capture new property tax collections, and that it's still a good investment for them to forego for the next 6 years, knowing that they'll be able to get the return on the back end of it. Steve, is that fairly accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
There he is.
I had a couple of questions on
Certainly.
how many new jobs have been created?
I'm expecting 10 overall. So far, we've created 3. And
3.
I'm
So-
looking to hire 2 more right now.
In 10 years, you'll have 10.
Well, by the end of the year, I'll have 5, so yeah. maybe more like 10.
How many new residents have you created in the community?
How many new residents?
It says 15 new residents in the community over the 10-year period.
And Steve, and that might, pardon me, Commissioner, that may be a Steve
Yeah.
question.
Based on the average household size for the city of Pittsburgh, times the number of new employees that you would hire and they would move into the city. So we just typically say if he has 10 new jobs, that at least 3 of those people will move into the community. I think in this case, I used 4. So you take that times the number, the average household size, you get the number of people that are created over that time. That may not be the exact.
Just a rough estimate then,
It's a
It
ratio.
is.
yeah.
Yes.
But-
it is
It's a
an estimate.
business ratio.
Into the city of Pittsburgh, that's what you estimated.
So what is the, I'm sorry.
So we can't know for sure where those people are gonna live.
Sure.
But we have to make an estimate of that.
What's the evaluation process? Do you look at it each year when the abatements come up?
Yes, ma'am, and I'm glad you brought that up. You'll recall at your last meeting, all of the existing property tax exemptions that we have on the books. Even though nothing about that project has changed, the city commission each year has the ability to consider it and renew it for another year, and you'll be able to do that with this project as well.
Any other questions? I guess I need to open up for public hearing. Property tax abatement. How do you say, is that Rallison or Railison?
Ralliston's fine.
You say Rallison, I say Railison. The City of Pittsburgh advertised for a public hearing to be held on February 25th, 2020 at the City Commission meeting commencing at 5:30 PM in the City Commission Room located in the Law Enforcement Center, 201 North Pine, to consider the request submitted by Rallison LP for a 6-year tax exemption. Anyone coming forward to speak to that? All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing and look for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Larry, seconded by Cheryl to approve the tax abatement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Todd. Moving on. Active Transportation Advisory Board appointments. Consider staff recommendation to appoint 2 members to the Active Transportation Advisory Board, ATAB, with 1 member to serve as a representative for the Northeast Quadrant of Pittsburgh, filling an unexpired term through December 31st, 2022, and 1 member to serve as a disability advocate, filling an unexpired term through December 2020. I think we have several.
We have 3 candidates for the 2 spots. All 3 are eligible for the disability spot, and there's only 2 that are in the Northeast Quadrant. And I say if any of them are here that would like to speak, welcome them to come forward.
Oh, here comes one.
Hello, my name is Erin Fletcher, and I do not live in the Northeast Quadrant. So I work with Special Olympics Kansas, and our committee had asked that we put someone in the running for the Active Transportation Board. So that's why I applied.
Thanks
for applying. Okay.
My name is Reno Sikora, and I do live in the Northeast Quadrant. Among things I forgot to put in my application or resume, there's been an increase in deaths and injuries to pedestrians and bicyclists across the United States. While the death and injury rate has fallen for people driving cars, it has gone up for pedestrians and bicyclists. And mostly this is a design issue. Our transportation system doesn't take into account people who are walking or riding their bicycles, or disabled people, or older people. And, I would take that's the sort of point of view that I would take with these things, is that, we have an increasing number of older people in this town. I'm 70 years old. I rode my bicycle my entire life until about 2 years ago. I finally decided it was getting, the consequences of a fall are so dire and could be so life-changing that I just quit riding it. I walk. I have a car, unfortunately. But as I said in my comments, that this is still a small enough town. It's still a relatively pleasant place to live, and the problems are not unsolvable. And the great bulk of people are going to continue to drive. When gas was high a few years ago, and I've been living here for about 20 years now, I noticed a big increase in bicyclists, people in motorized wheelchairs, every other type of conceivable transportation that didn't use a bunch of gas. That's backed off now. The gas has gotten cheaper relatively, and you don't see as much of that. But I think that that if you make it possible to get around without using a car, people will do it. Americans move to Europe or Japan, and they use public transportation and they walk. And Japanese and Europeans move to the United States and they drive. Because that's what we encourage, that's what our businesses are set up for, that's what our transportation, we've spent billions of dollars. We've spent 75 years building roads, and the roads are in the worst shape in my life. So, I think we have to start taking a different approach. And I've been involved in these battles since going back to the 70s in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I worked on the bicycle improvement bond issue, and I went to some of the planning meetings, and that's where I first encountered, pushy graduate students who had some kind of agenda of their own. And also in Austin, Texas, where I will say that the real estate, the money involved was much greater. There was an agenda going on in Austin, Texas. They would sit up there and doodle and ostentatiously read magazines and everything and ignore us in a studied way when we make comments because there was a lot of money. Well, here there's not a whole lot of money. There's not a real estate boom with people coming in from all over the world. We're a relatively stable community that maybe can come to grips with its problems. In some ways, I've been very impressed with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh seems to pay its bills and take care of its problems. I don't agree with everything they do, but, you know, I thought the stuff with the university and was it Project 23 or Lot 23, that was a good use of money. Nothing's free. And I guess that's about all. I won't be a docile, you know, go on. I've applied for jobs in bicycle
I
planning.
think you can prove that, sir. I think they can count on you to voice your
Yeah,
opinion.
and I've, you know, applied for jobs, and of course, there wasn't, all they wanted to do was paint a line down the street and call that bicycle planning. Well, you know, I've noticed there's now those things on Broadway to ride, well, you know, Broadway's not a very safe place to ride your bicycle.
Well, we have a very active and successful active transportation advisory board, so
All right, well.
glad you're stepping up.
All right, well, that's enough for me. Thank you.
Before we vote on this, I have a question I want to ask, and it came from last commission meeting. When we have appointed people to boards, it's always done by a paper ballot. And, you know, the people asked me if it was confidential ballot, because with one member gone last week and from the board,
Right,
and also this week, I just want you to explain how we do this, Henry, and
Sure.
By the way, I'm not gone, I'm in the meeting.
I don't see you, but I can hear you.
I can hear you read.
And obviously, when Patrick's on the phone, he's making a voice vote, but we give you each your own individual ballots. They have your names on them. We tally them up here. I have a master one with my name on it. It all is turned in to the clerk, which is open record. And you do vote by voice vote to actually approve the members. And that's kind of the procedure that we've done for many years, and I appreciate you bringing that up. So the people will have a better idea of how that
And
proceeds.
if anybody wants to know how, if we vote by paper ballot or voice ballot, Patrick, they can come to the city clerk and she can inform them.
Right.
Exactly,
Yeah,
that is correct.
Thanks for answering that question.
You're very welcome.
All right, everyone got their ballots? And our names are on them, so.
Right, but the people at home don't.
Right, but I mean, it's open record.
Patrick, would you care to weigh in? Don, can you ask Patrick how he's voting?
Hey, Patrick, did you want to vote on this? I think.
I sure do.
Okay, so we,
Fletcher and Guyer,
okay. Thank you.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, so looks like the names that came out with the most votes are Sikora and Fletcher. So we would entertain a motion to appoint those two to the Active Transportation Advisory Board.
I'll make a motion to appoint both of these people to Active Transportation Advisory Board.
Okay. It's been moved by Chuck, seconded by Larry. All those in favor say aye.
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 The opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. And thank you. And welcome aboard. All right, moving on to change order and final payment, 716 North Broadway demolition. Consider approval of change order number 1 reflecting an increase of $1,500 and final payment of the new contract amount of $40,000 to JRB Industries, Inc. of Parsons, Kansas for the demolition of the structure located at 716 North Broadway.
The building has been demoed, obviously, and the site has been cleared. Instead of bringing in dirt like was in the original plan, we went ahead and brought in rock there. There'd been about a 2 to 3 foot crawl space area underneath there, and rather than try and worry about compaction and the future maintenance issues of having soil there and trying to mow and whatnot, we went ahead and put rock back in its place.
I have a question. On the south wall, there I don't remember what the business is next door.
Buddy.
Who paid to have that waterproofed and sheeted?
I believe that came to the commission before, and I think it was split between the city and the property owner.
Okay.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the change order and final payment?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Yep, moved by Larry, seconded by Patrick to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Change order and final payment, Centennial and Rouse Traffic Signal Modification Project. Consider approval of change order number 1 reflecting a deduct of $908.20, making a new contract construction amount of $81,777.50, and final payment in the amount of $14,032.24 to CDL Electric Company, Inc. of Pittsburgh, Kansas for the Centennial Rouse Traffic Signal Modification Project.
I apologize, I think my window accidentally got closed on me here, but I had the original plans of that intersection called up there. But essentially, this is just the final pay of our intersection work that changed the intersection there at Rouse and Centennial from 2 lanes southbound to 3 lanes southbound, having a dedicated left, right, and center turn lane, and then northbound having a dedicated left turn lane and then a through and right lane on the right side, and left us with 1 lane northbound coming out of that intersection on Rouse Street. The change in quantities there, essentially when the plans were originally drawn up, we weren't sure which project would be doing the striping at what point in time, so we went ahead and put some additional quantity on this project to go further down South Rouse. It timed out fairly well that we just did the portion that was asphalt, and then the concrete portion that stayed with the South Rouse project as originally planned.
It's nice. It's nice getting to the hospital. Any questions for Cameron? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second. To approve the change order and final payment. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you, Cameron. Ordinance number G 1310, consider approval of ordinance number G 1310, amending section 8232 of the Pittsburgh City Code to delete the current subsection F, which exempts the imposition of an administrative charge and fee for an industry or institution whose normal procedure for payment exceeds the time limit for original due date, and create a new subsection F to provide the accounts with unpaid balances shall be forwarded to the state of Kansas for collection in accordance with KSA 756201.
This is just an ordinance to allow us to recoup our fees that are associated with the collections from the state set-off program. The state, when we have delinquent bills, they go into a dead status, or whatever you want to call it, where we're not collecting any more money on that bill. The state has a program where you can put the dollar amount and the person who owes the bill on the state website, and then if they're a state employee, or if they get a tax refund, or if they have unclaimed funds sitting out there, they can attach our claim for the water bill to that, and then we get reimbursed. The state charges 19% if they have a social security number, and 24% without a social security number. We've ran a report for the last 5 years, and in 2015 we collected $18,700 from the set-off program, about $18,500 in 2016. In 2017 we collected again about $18,500. In 2018 we've collected $31,720, and in 2019 we've collected $41,176. And if we were to go through a collection agency, instead of using this process, they usually charge 50% for anything they collect. So I think it's a good program that the city uses. We also use it on the municipal court as well too.
So the history of collections, we've obviously increased quite a bit over the last 5 years. Have we changed our process or changed personnel or added personnel or?
Tammy does a great job. She goes through this stuff weekly and updates the set-off website.
So it just takes some monitoring.
Yeah.
You've always done that, haven't you, Jamie?
Huh?
The city's always done that, haven't they?
Yeah, we've used this program since 1997, I believe, is when we started using it.
Okay, any other questions for Jamie? Do I have a motion to approve the ordinance?
I move to approve.
I'll second it.
Moved by Cheryl, seconded by Larry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, at the last meeting, we tabled the land use plan so that individuals would have more time to review it. So we're here again to consider approval of our land use plan.
Good evening, Commissioners. I thought I'd start by addressing some of the concerns that Commissioner Brooks had voiced at the last meeting. I had talked to our consultants about the graph that had some errors in it. They're working to fix that. It didn't even match the information above it, so it was just an oversight, so they're going to get that taken care of. Those top 5 employers did come from the Chamber of Commerce's website, so that's where they had gotten those numbers. And then regarding the level of participation we had, unfortunately the consultants weren't able to be here. They're running a charrette in another community, but they did provide a letter outlining their opinion of that participation. I'm happy to provide a copy of that with each of you if you'd like it.
Thank you.
So the letter that she just handed us is outlining the communication that was used to inform citizens that they could participate, which is all the usual suspects between media and social media. And outlining the response, as you reported last time, Britton, 459 responses to the online survey. Stakeholder committee was 15 people. And then we had a public open house where 125 people attended. So. All right, are there any questions that came up these last 2 weeks for Britton and Quentin?
I have a question, couple questions. Let's see, if we adopt a plan, once that plan has been adopted, the city should amend affected ordinances and plans so they may be aligned with the vision and recommendation of the plan. Why would we have to amend ordinances? Why don't we enforce the ordinance that's already on the books? What does that mean?
These are just recommendations. So all of these are worded in a way that would invoke action based on the plan and the recommendations provided within it. And by adopting this, no changes are made without coming to you again. And so any of these recommendations, there's one to do a downtown plan, there's one to create citywide branding, different things like that. None of that would happen without addressing you. Even moving forward with additional plans in the future, those contracts would have to come to you to be approved or denied. And so, again, this is just a guidebook for our office. One of the public input notes was that planning has a tendency to be reactive rather than proactive, and so this was an effort for us to get ahead of the game, have a plan to provide to people. But again, any changes that would come as a result of this would come before this body, before anything happened.
So what do you see as the next step?
I think the next layer of this plan should be, there are some recommendations for neighborhood assessment plans, traffic studies, things like that. I think any of those would be worthwhile endeavors to continue this planning effort. Since the beginning, we've talked about how this is a foundation for a comprehensive plan for our community, and so I think that it's our responsibility to continue that in whatever direction we see fit moving forward.
So this isn't unlike the downtown design standards that we approved in 2018, and to my knowledge, we've not seen any significant changes or ordinance changes from that.
Yeah, those downtown design standards were a resolution, so, again, it's a guideline that we give our property owners when they come in and say they're going to do something to those buildings. It's not an ordinance by any means.
It's not an ordinance change.
The downtown design standards were not, they were a resolution that was passed.
When you look at it, the time frame when it says immediately on several of them, it was concerning. I had one of the same questions about that.
It's up to us. Yeah, this is just their ideas based on.
Sure.
They place priority on the recommendations they give, but again, it's your decision moving forward whether to approve or disapprove any recommendations we make based on this plan.
And again, a lot of these recommendations that come from this are, one, from their expertise in doing this, because this is what they do. But then also, a lot of the recommendations come from the public input sessions that they held. So-
And you've had basically 600 people respond, public input on this.
Yeah.
In
That's
total,
not a
in the-
lot of people. And
Oh, yeah, it is.
out of how many,
For something like this, that's
how many
huge.
people that live in Pittsburgh?
It doesn't work that way, Chuck. I mean.
Well,
I mean, it does, I'm just telling you from experience, it doesn't work
What would
that
you
way.
want to see as?
Oh, I'm just saying, I'm just trying to look at the numbers, which I didn't think was a lot, and Dawn disagrees, she thinks it's a lot, that's all I was pointing out.
And that's the purpose of the letter. We didn't want to provide our opinion, we wanted to provide the professional opinion of the consultants that we paid to conduct this study. And the last few paragraphs on that letter that was just handed to you kind of outline their professional opinion of that, and they were impressed with the participation that we had, given the topic of the plan, and even the time of year.
I think one thing we need to be careful of too is people are busy and they have lives, and if we can get 600 people to weigh in on something, we need to be careful to not act like that's insignificant, because it's
Well, I
going to
didn't say
just.
that. I'm
Can
just
I
saying-
finish? It's just going to
Go
send a
ahead.
message to people that unless there's some huge number of thousands, we're not going to listen to them. I mean, our goal, as you can see this room tonight, is to get as many people. We're going to be doing an IP event on Thursday. You know, I think we had 70 people at the last one. You know, I'd like to see 700 there, Commissioner, but we've just got to go with what we've got. So
Sure.
I hope people understand that we appreciate the time they take, whether it's filling out a survey or coming, and if they can't make it, you know, let us know. But it's a great point. I mean, I don't know how you're going to we can only get the attendance we can get, and we do go to an effort to get as many people as we can to know that these things are happening, but in the end, people are busy. or
Any
they're
other
disinterested.
questions? Oh, sorry, Darren.
That's right.
I do.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions. As far as like the PSU master plan, why are we involved with their master plan?
We wouldn't be. These are recommendations for our community, and so they encompass our partners as well as just us.
Okay.
And a lot of the roads around the university, our infrastructure is their infrastructure, so there's always been a capital planning effort that includes PSU because there's such a big footprint in our community.
In that, it talked about housing, so that's why I was asking on the PSU master plan. So, that's fine, thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, I think it's a good idea that we have a plan for the future. And there's a couple approaches that we're gonna take, or we could vote to take. And my preference would be the reactive approach. You know, let's take a look of what we have, what might go there, and go that route. We'll explain the two different approaches. Reactive, which I think is something that we review and compared to the proactive. What would the proactive look like?
I think the proactive approach to planning is what we're doing right now. And even at some level, I think we are acting a little reactively in doing this. We have developers come in a lot, like we've said throughout this whole process, that ask us questions, ask us if we have a comprehensive plan, and we don't. And that's sometimes a deterrent for those individuals that are looking to invest in our community. And so I think acting proactively and adopting a plan like this allows us to have those firm answers for those developers and people coming in looking to invest in our community.
And we do take proactive approaches, and we have historically in Pittsburgh, I would say over the last, 5 to 10 years. We've been proactive in some areas, whereas, as Britton alluded to, we have developers here regularly. And thankfully to those that thought up IP 2030 in 2012, we have the Mid-City Renaissance Plan, we have the Housing Needs Assessment. Those kinds of things are impressive to developers that we have had that forethought into doing that, because that shows them kind of where we stand as a community, and they go back and they decide if the information they have on Pittsburgh that we've already done for them is significant enough for them to look at Pittsburgh.
I think we have a really good example of reactive. South Rouse is a really good example of reactive. We built out, that was just a 2-lane road with just ditches on either side, and then it grew out, the whole area grew out, and that road became very inadequate. So we had to react to that, and it was actually considerably more expensive to do it that way.
Well, my concerns is with the proactive, and you're talking about developers, with the developer that was interested about our property on West Fifth Street. And we proactively decided to go with that developer, and that didn't work out for us too well, so.
Well, that was actually a reactive.
That was reactive?
Yeah, the building fell down and.
We let a building almost fall into Fifth Street, and we had to react as a
All
city
right,
to
that
maintain
building
safety
had-
for our community.
And going back to our ordinance on that building, we had an ordinance that, it's on the books, that the property owner should maintain their property. And if they don't, since it was almost falling down, we could have took that down and put it on his, when he sold property, we put it on his taxes. We didn't do that.
So help me understand, Chuck, how
Well-
that's related to a plan like this.
Well, that's my concern. We have a couple buildings now in town that look like they're about to fall down, and somehow I don't know who, if there was a engineering study on how we prop them up. But I just, I guess I'm more, we should have a plan, but we should also enforce the ordinances that we have now. If them two properties, I know one's been like that since September, and it's still got some wood holding it up. I think we ought to check into maybe what's gonna be done with that.
We can talk about that on non-agenda items. Let's go ahead and get back to the land use plan. Are there any questions specific to
No,
this?
I'm in favor of it at the reactive approach.
Okay. Questions? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the land use plan?
So moved.
I would second it.
Moved by Patrick, seconded by Larry. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Oh, dang it. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks for all your hard work. All right, moving on. Network and switching update. Consider staff request to purchase network and switching upgrades to the Converge One to include hardware, software, licensing, and installation.
Hi, Mayor, Commissioners. We were here about 6 years ago, right, talking about, well, not we, all of us, but the commission and the staff were. As you know, technology's become increasingly important in every aspect of the services we provide. The public safety sales tax was passed in 2013, and the public discussion at the time included investment in technology that would support public safety operations. The public recognized this, and they easily passed the additional sales tax. But to be able to deliver that technology to our public safety staff needs, we have to have a core network that's stable, that can process the data quickly, and provides adequate storage. 6 years ago, our network core wasn't able to do that. We were acquiring new public safety systems, and our network core couldn't support those systems. So at that time, we made a significant upgrade that could accommodate those changes. At that time, we wanted to be sure that the new systems were functioning well, that we had implemented them into our procedures, and that everything was functioning properly. We did want to add at that time a disaster recovery system, but we weren't ready to do that yet. And we knew that we needed to have that. Now, some of the equipment, when we did upgrade it 5 or 6 years ago, didn't need to be upgraded. It was only 5 years old or so. And now we're at the point now where that we do need to replace some of those pieces of equipment that are in our core network structure. This particular update that's in front of you replaces components that weren't originally upgraded, and it makes other components available so that we can create a disaster recovery system. Like we did the first time, we're financing this over multiple years. This time it's only over 4 years because that's the sunset of the tax. Right? And by the way, it's also important to remember that during this time, as we've built this system and as we've acquired these public safety systems, we've also shared those systems with other jurisdictions. Currently, there are 3, besides the city, we're also sharing our public safety system applications with PSU and with the county. Right? And we are hosting those applications on our servers, on this system that we're talking about.
Do they pay us for that service?
They do. They do pay us for those services. We don't, it's not what I would call a revenue source for us. We basically look to recover our costs and then to pay for some of the time that our IT folks spend doing it. But this system is it's been here it is no doubt our most critical system. And we need this to support this public safety systems that we have in place. With us today are these nerdy guys in the second row here are from Converge One. They're our design consultant. They've been working with us for 10 years, more maybe, on various projects, and they designed the system, and we'll be buying the system through their offices. They're on the state contract, which means we get the lowest prices we can for the services and the equipment that they provide. If you have any technical questions, they're here to answer those. So if you have
Well, I have a couple questions, but they're not technical.
Sure.
So some of these locations this equipment's going to be at is replacing old equipment that's there that doesn't function with the new system. I take it.
That's right.
It's absolutely, yes.
The second question, you said this is going to be funded over 4 years?
That's correct.
From public safety sales tax money?
That's correct. Any other questions?
Well, as somebody who's been going to emergency preparedness all over southeast Kansas, this is critical. I mean, to keep our infrastructure up to date, and especially the disaster recovery. So I think sometimes we see a big investment in the beginning and then you don't maintain and you end up in trouble. So.
Well, now we have a few more services that are going to be necessary to actually establish a disaster recovery system. But the equipment we're replacing is going to be used in the disaster recovery system. It's not going to waste. We're replacing that older equipment with the newer equipment. So.
How secure is this? Because we hear every day where something's hacked into and either held for ransom or some other such thing.
Security is one of the biggest problems that municipalities are facing nowadays. Because cities are becoming increasingly targets for hackers.
So this is.
Well, we have security that's designed from the ground up in this system. You guys want to jump on that?
Having the disaster recovery is about the best proactive approach we can have to prevent the unthinkable. I mean, the truth of it is the data center and the hardware that's being proposed that would be implemented is the strongest piece of security we'll have.
Is that off-site or on-site?
On-site. The
On-site.
disaster recovery will be off-site.
Okay.
And we're also, just to echo on that, Commissioner, we're under federal and state guidelines that require certain layers of security so that we can be connected with the state. Basically, the state stands alone, we stand alone, and then we put security between the two of us. So it's I don't think I can safely stand here and say anything's hack-proof, but it's as secure as we can get based on today's technology. In the disaster recovery piece, I just want to share this with you. Many, many years ago, under our old system, we had a server fail, and we didn't know it had failed. We continued to import reports, and we thought it was going to the system. We had to go out and hire a part-time person to work in the police department in the old building for over a year, inputting 2 years of crime reports, one at a time. because we didn't have an appropriate backup recovery system. So again, this is why it's important. It's not just our data, but it's also the county data, the jail, so on. It's just, it goes on, and PSU as well, yes.
Well, I'm glad you're, a lot of security in it, because it is, those people are smart that's hacking in. They're
Absolutely.
and they're never ending, so I'm
We
glad
got
to hear
smart people
that.
working for us too.
Those nerds you were talking about?
Yeah, the nerds are gonna save
Some of them are
us.
smarter than others.
They
One
put
more
me up
thing,
here.
one more thing on security, because Jeff's up here and he doesn't usually get to come up here. So the other side of security is our employees. We have 350 employees, and getting tricked and doing things by ornery software companies is really one of the major things that happens. And so with Jeff's help and the team, we've implemented a series where we really get tested probably every month or two by their group on whether we're responding, or in this case, not responding to these emails. And of course, as some of us fail, we get slapped on the wrist and retrained. So they've done a comprehensive approach to this, because it is a real threat, and it's not, it doesn't matter how big or small you are, we still have, $40-50 million that we are responsible for, and that's a pretty big nugget.
Good to hear.
So thanks to these guys, because they're doing
You
a
were
lot.
also tested in your email.
Did I
None of you
fail?
failed, by
Yeah.
the way.
Oh, dear.
You've all done well in your email.
really?
We've tried all of you, and you've done well. Keep up the good work.
Yikes.
I know this is a big number, obviously, these types of purchases, but just to echo what the mayor said a moment ago, this infrastructure is critical to everything that we do, not just in the police department, but we take calls from traffic signs that have been mowed over so that we can document that, get that out there, and get those things fixed before something bad happens. Our saying here in the police department is, if it falls apart in dispatch, it falls apart everywhere. And it starts with that critical computer and the infrastructure that's there that allows us to keep doing what we do. We can do things we've never been able to do as far as mapping. So if we page fire out on a call, for example, we already know where the fire hydrants are, so they know before they get there. With the technology they're doing, it just makes us so much better at what we do.
All right, any other questions? I would look for a motion to approve the network and switching update.
So moved.
I second it.
Moved by Larry, seconded by Chuck. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Moving on to the financing.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we did finance this over 4 years. We go out, when we do financing for equipment, this is basically equipment lease finance process. We actually send out a call for quotations for interest rates to fund it over the 4-year period. We got 4 good bids, all from banks with branches here in town. We did have the lowest percentage rate was 1.851%. So those are really good. Anything below 2% is a pretty darn good rate for financing. So we feel lucky about that too. So that's going to allow us to fund it at that rate over a 4-year period. So what we're asking for you now is for approval to enter into the agreement for financing for this.
Yes, I failed to read it. So you're asking us to consider a staff request to enter into the lease purchase agreement for financing to be used for the purchase of the information technology network equipment, software licensing, and installation services pending negotiation of an acceptable lease purchase agreement.
Right. We just got these quotes on Friday. So we haven't finished the agreements yet.
Any other questions? All right, I'd look for a motion to approve the financing.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Patrick, seconded by Cheryl. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here. All right, moving into non-agenda and reports and requests. Darren, you have,
We were asked, well, I'm sure you've heard about the roads. It's rained a little bit, and so I asked Matt. He's going to come in and give a full-blown report at the study session, I think in March. But I thought, based on the current situation, we'd just have him come in and maybe take some of your questions or hear from you, and have him give a brief 5 minutes on where we stand as a community, because I know I shared a video with some people today. Kansas City, Missouri's pothole line had 35,000 requests in the last 30 days, which is 5 times higher than they've ever had. And the sad part of that number is only 9 of those were incidences where citizens could call in and say, I hit a pothole, and actually get a claim for their car. Because if the city doesn't know about it and hasn't had a chance to fix it, then theoretically, they're not responsible for it in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm not saying that's the case here, but we thought maybe we should give Matt some time to, I'm stalling while he gets it up. So he gave me the look.
Favorite topic.
Thanks, Matt.
I'm good. Yeah, software deals. They can find fire hydrants and not have to call me in the middle of the night. Anyways, so yeah, there's a dozen plus different types of asphalt failures. I grabbed a couple just to show you some examples. I don't know if you can fix that or not. Rotation view. Well, I'm gonna flip through real quick. Anyways, I highlighted this. Potholes are most likely to occur over roads with hot mix asphalt surfaces 1 to 2 inches. That's the majority of what we do. The majority of the roads in this town are all brick with an overlay over the top of them. So that's just for your information.
So Matt, would you say that is our basic core problem?
Yes.
That bricks with asphalt on top?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Other part, just the continual poor drainage being a problem. Moving forward, I think everyone understands that, you know, water and asphalt are not a good combo. That being said, 2018 we had 40 to 50 inches of rain. That's a NOAA. Last year we had 60 to 70 inches of rain. That's a NOAA. The next couple deals, obviously every day I get asked about Joplin Street. Every day. I don't go to dinner without being asked. So what I did is I just took a Google Street View, which is June of 2013 and March of 2014. Give you some examples, and inside of that, we did pave Joplin Street in the fall or the late summer of 2013, just so everyone has some context here. Problems along Joplin, this dark area, you know, that's moisture setting against the curb. 2014, repave, more moisture, and you just kind of keep going down the street, areas, intersections. So, you know, Facebook comments, all the things that are out there, we know they exist. So Friday, when it actually dried up and hadn't rained for, you know, maybe 4 days, we went out there, tried to square some holes. Hot mix is not being made, we put in cold mix. We tamped it in, we heated it up, we rolled it in. This is Friday, everyone can drive 60 down Joplin again. Don't do that. I'm sorry, being facetious.
That's why we have the.
This is what it looked like Monday afternoon. I mean, we've tried to put gravel because they're heavier material than cold mix to try and just some of the deeper stuff just to take the shock off. But continuing, Joplin, just some wet areas, you know, that moisture traveling down the street like that in those lanes, it's tough. And it tracks. You go through the intersection, it tracks on your tires halfway through the block. So that's what we have going on there. You can go down the street view, Google Streets. I didn't use anything fancy. Same deal if you go down on our public-facing GIS system. You can see Joplin is 16th. These dark areas here shows the moisture from an aerial view over where everything's dry. This is summer of 2018 aerials. You can see where it drags clear down the block like I was talking about. Down Joplin there, that moisture coming off that intersection. There's 8th and Elm. You can see moisture in the intersection. 9th and Joplin, moisture in the intersection. There's drainage challenges on Joplin where it goes back to the east, goes over to Grand or Smelter to catch a curb inlet, which ultimately goes over through Ramus, which is, you can see at the top of the storm pipe there. I mean, there's just not a lot of fault. It's just flat. Anyways, other areas, you know, that you can continue to see, just to vet my process here, there's 3rd and Elm. That intersection is real rough. We're going to try and put something in there. There's an example over on Cedar Crest Lane, Abbey and Amber. There's some stuff over there. This is an example of, you see it, there's a sump pump discharge. You can see where it gets out in the street. You can actually see inside of this area where there's been a patch there, because what happens from the sump pump, it projects out into the street. before it falls back. Obviously, then you can see the debris within the gutter line that keeps water from draining downhill. Just another example, another example, another example. And I would say it's not one end of town versus the other, east, west, north, south. It's throughout town. It's no, we're not playing favorites here. This is an example of what happened after Monday's rain. This is, we had put a base lift on Chestnut. We still have another surface course to go when we get to start making asphalt again. Sweet gums, we hate them. But you can see all this, you can chop those down.
Do we need
whatever you want to do.
We need a program,
But
chop
you
down?
can see how all that debris washes out in the street. It's either gonna hold all that moisture on that debris on the street, or it's gonna go back into the gutter.
So we need to sweep them up.
We're working on it, and
I mean,
actually, we've been through.
Residents should sweep up.
We were actually paving that street in October and November of last year. So that's since then. That's not, and we've been trying to make a concentrated effort on going from Fourth and Walnut through, back to the southwest through those areas on a lot of those older curb and gutter, trying to get all that debris and stuff cleaned up. It's a never-ending challenge. This is actually on Broadway. You can see where there's debris along the street, pushing that water clear out into half the way into the lane because of some of that. No favorites. This is another one. You can see where it's washed out there.
Hey, so Matt,
And then,
let's save everybody at home's neck
yeah.
and not look at the whole town sideways. What are we gonna do? What can we do?
So, fast forwarding, there's a parking problem, running. Just for comparative purposes, when that project was put in, that project roughly was $111,000 is why we surfaced that project.
I'm sorry, you lost me. What project was that?
I'm sorry, Joplin.
Joplin, okay.
The Joplin stretch that we're.
Okay.
Well,
2013?
2013, mill and overlay, $111,000. I just took some KDOT numbers real quick. Their averages of 2019 prices, threw it on. I went 7th to 20th and just said if you ripped out the existing Brick Street, the curb and gutter, the same distance, no drainage improvements, no nothing, that's a $1.8 price tag. So that's what we're talking about of why we do what we do right now. And at that point, that would have been 2 years worth of budget on 13 blocks of street, roughly $140,000 a block. So, the drainage stuff, we are working on some suggestions and recommendations to bring to the commission at some point about, participation with community residents about things that they can do with their sump pumps, their downspouts, and those type of things to get that water back off the street and help that away too.
Matt, you might get more calls than I do on Joplin. I'm sure you do. But I've had some conversation, and tell me how this works, because I think Darren said it before. When the street sales tax money comes in, that's when we work on streets, right? We don't really spend money we don't have.
Correct.
Another thing, we can't work on the streets when it's raining or it's snowing or it's ice. So we have a limited time frame.
Your real window of opportunity is between April and October.
Yeah.
For best.
So, like I said, here recently I've had some meetings with people, and I'm sure Darren has too, that they've offered some suggestions, maybe help with the streets during that premium time. But that would not, you know what I'm saying, maybe they could help. And I don't know how it works, and then the street sales stuff, money comes in, then you pay it back. That's some things that I've talked to people about. I don't know if that's something that we're gonna ever look at. I don't make that call, but I do know there's a certain amount of money in a certain time frame that when we can work on streets, but when we can't work on streets and they're in bad shape, we sure hear a lot of bitching but complaints about them, so.
Yeah, and during the winter months, we put in a cold mix asphalt, just to try to hold some material to keep your tire from dropping off in it. When it rains, that material's gone. That's kind of the bottom line of the deal, and it rains all the time.
So, Darren mentioned we're gonna have a study session, I guess the second meeting in March. And so if you have questions or
Well,
something.
no, that.
No, I'm just
sure.
saying, if
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
something that you
Yeah,
want
if you have
that
something
in
you
more
want to
detail,
specifically address during that,
Yeah,
that timeframe,
yeah.
I'll be more than
Let-
happy to put it together in the study
let
session.
Darren know.
And that's
Yeah,
why I
it'll be
kind of
way
roughed
more
that number
comprehensive.
together, just to give you an
Right.
idea of why did they overlay it versus,
Right.
why can't we just rip it out and fix it?
And we wanted you to have, your constituents, when you call, say, this city is extremely aware of this, we're hearing it, and we'll do. Believe me, once it gets warm and dry, they'll get on it, but it's still only gonna be asphalt over brick, and that's a Band-Aid.
And clean your gumballs out of the road.
You guys have been out, somebody told me today you're cleaning ditches out. That's important, and our storm, whatever you call them, the storm sewers.
Yeah, all the inlets
Sometimes
and
they
everything
get
like that.
clogged,
No, we're
so.
making a concentrated effort and it's just,
Yeah,
but
there's a lot of stuff.
it's
to do.
everywhere,
Yeah.
you know,
Matt, about how many miles of streets in the city limits?
144.
144? That's a lot to try to maintain.
Does that include alleys?
Nope, there's 30 miles of alleys.
You have both street sweepers going right now.
I do have both
Nice to
street- we revived the dinosaur.
How many loads a day are you taking cleaning out gutters?
You know, we usually get about 4 to 5 dumps out of out of a street sweeper, just depending on where we're at and getting back across town to dump and stuff.
So, but you're doing other work besides the street sweepers? Aren't
Oh,
you
yeah.
cleaning?
Yeah, I'm running a skid steer.
Yeah.
No, when that material starts building up in the gutters that thick and that moisture and it gets leaves and sticks, and our vacuum sweeper's great, regenerative air, but anyways, it's great, but it can get sticks and limbs and stuff like that clogged and that, so even some of the heavy debris streets, we're literally running a skid steer and loading a truck and hauling it out, is where we're at today.
And this is a reason that when you look at the concrete that's failed in town, out on the bypass that we're getting ready to do, it's 4 inches, 3 inches deep. You put in 6 or 8 inches of concrete, like some of these roads that you've allowed us to fund over the years. The idea is the people after us aren't gonna have to come in and deal with all those in addition to everything else, so. They know what they're doing. I think there's only 12 or 13 of them. And thanks to you, they have a lot of good equipment, but thanks to Mother Nature, they don't have a huge window for getting much done, so. Thanks for coming in and giving us an
Thank you,
update.
Roy. Thanks, Matt. Darren, what other non-agenda, I'm sorry, sir, public comments are over.
We've got,
It's non-agenda.
Non-agenda for the city staff.
I did want
if
to
you-
mention the.
I'll be happy to visit with you afterwards individually, or Darren will, but
Can't comment publicly
No.
on this.
nope,
Can I ask a question?
no. After the meeting, you can ask whoever you need to. Go ahead.
I did want to bring up, if anybody didn't hear, the farm show was awarded. It's going to be at Pitt State University. That's a huge effort by the university and city staff and the county and the Convention and Visitors Bureau. The idea of the Plaster Center was to hold other events than just track meets. And with the mud and the heat and everything that comes along with the farm show, it seemed like a good idea to see if it was possible, and apparently they think it is. So that's going to happen this year. Should be a nice boon for the retailers in town and some of us that haven't made it out to the farm show. Maybe we can make it out now that it's in town and on concrete. And then finally, I hope he's still here. The Polar Plunge, I should have hit this last week, I didn't. We actually, with Chris Moore's leadership, who is always the go-to guy on this, we had the second highest in the state behind the Kansas City metro area, which is saying something for a town of 20,000. Chris, you want to say anything real quick? I know you're never a stranger to the mic, and he raised $35,000, so.
So the Polar Plunge was on February 8th. We had over 25 teams. We had over 150 plungers. The local businesses in town and all over southeast Kansas that helped us meet our goal of 35,000 plus. We actually still have some money rolling in. So we're second highest in the state of Kansas, beating out Topeka, Wichita, Maize, Salina, and then western Kansas and Lawrence have some plunges coming up, plus Emporia. Smoked all them. It's a competition for us to see who can raise the most. All the money goes to the same spot, Special Olympics Kansas, but when Southeast Kansas can say we raised 35,000 plus for Special Olympics, it's pretty amazing because Kansas City raised 80. So we're catching them. That's my goal. We're going to catch Kansas City and catch them. So.
Well,
And
thank
this
you.
guy's do it.
Yeah, let's give him a round of applause.
That's all I had, Mayor.
IP 2030, event on Thursday. Somebody want to share about that? Sarah?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Yes, this week, this Thursday at 6 p.m. at Butler's Quarters, the Imagine Pittsburgh 2030 Committee is hosting a community conversation. We're going to be focusing on two of the focus areas in the strategic plan, education and housing. It is open to the public, and we invite everyone to attend if they can.
What time?
This is 6 to 7:30 p.m.
Thank you.
Where's this place?
Butler's Quarters is the former location of Little's. It's on
500 block of Broadway.
513 North Broadway. Okay.
Darren, in terms of the Silverback roads, how do you want to handle that? That was brought up.
I think we'll just have Olson's, and we'll just put it on the agenda for the next meeting and have the inspector in and
Okay.
address. I'm looking at Cameron. He's not waving me off, so, yeah. If that works.
That's good. Okay. Any other, I think we also had talked about having a study session on electricity in April.
Yes,
Yes, so.
we were shooting for March, but we can't get all 5 of you here in March, so we will push the table.
The bell's ringing, I guess class is over, so.
I hear it.
You have anything?
Yes, I'd like to ask for a 30-minute executive session concerning personnel matters of non-elected personnel.
Okay, is there a second?
I second it.
All right, there's been a motion to move into executive session for non-agenda personnel.
Mayor, I'm sorry, but that motion won't suffice
Okay.
for purposes of the Kansas Open Meetings Act. I don't know, since I'm not aware of what the
Topic is?
the issue is, I don't know how to help you frame the motion.
Commissioner Brooks, what would you want to expand on your motion? What is the topic that you would want us to go into executive session for non-agenda personnel?
So in the past, has there always been a topic concerning? Every single time.
In relationship to what you're talking about, yes.
I'm good.
Okay. Well, it's a non-valid amendment, or a non-valid motion, meeting open meetings, so what should we do?
I can work with Commissioner Brooks to put it together for the next agenda, if that would be agreeable.
Sure.
Okay, well, I think this also goes to transparency. We have an obligation to be transparent with our community, but we also have an obligation to be transparent with each other. So I think that's probably a good opportunity for all of us to learn that if we're going into an executive session for non-elected personnel, our only personnel is the city manager. We have an obligation to each other and an obligation to the city manager to be clear as to why we're going into an executive session. So hopefully Henry can work with you and we can have an appropriate motion made. So I guess since it's not a non-appropriate motion, does it just go away or do we vote it down or what do we do?
I probably to just keep the record clear, you should probably vote to deny the motion.
Okay, well, there is a motion on the table. All those in favor of going into an executive session for non-elected personnel, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Aye.
Aye.
Patrick, are you still there? I think he's gone. So it's a failed motion. All right, anything else?
So it was 2 ayes and 2.
So it did not pass. It was a
Yeah,
tie.
it says we can't do it. We can't do it.
Right. So, and I think, just in the spirit of transparency, Commissioner Brooks and I have talked this weekend and I did ask her to be specific on her motion. And I did tell her that she was free to make a motion during non-agenda items, but I did ask that she be very specific in why she wanted to go into an executive session. again, in transparency to us and transparency to the city manager, which is also good HR policy. I mean, the city manager is our only employee, and when we should be fair and reasonable HR practices, so. And I know it's been frustrating, but hopefully we can all learn from this, so.
According to the, I think the league government handbook, I got a copy when I first became a commissioner. I think, I can't remember what year that was, that explained different things that we do as commissioners. And I believe that might have been a 2013 or 2000, I'm not for sure. But anyway, I've talked to city clerk about it, and she is going to, when they, how does it work, Tammy? They have a meeting coming up in April, and they will publish the new handbook for elected personnel and list different things that we do as a commission, some guidelines.
Right.
So.
And just another point, you know, the city clerk is not the city manager's secretary, nor is she ours. So if it's, I think we've talked before, if you have an agenda item, you need to contact the city manager. If it's related to the city manager, that's the role of the mayor.
Well, this one's an agenda item. I was just
I'm
asking
just
that we all be
clarifying,
provided a current copy of the handbook.
Right.
The league's printing the 2020 version right now, and they should have them out in a week, and everybody around the state, all elected officials get one. So you will definitely get yours as soon as they're printed.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.